disease prevention and control of the diseases that we're interested in. Prior to Friday, USDA was not taking an active role in porcine epidemic diarrhea virus. As of Friday, however, Secretary Vilsack, who's the Secretary of Agriculture, changed all of that. So I'm thinking that's maybe a little bit of a game changer for everybody. And I've spent pretty much all afternoon today trying, hopefully, to get some idea of how we are going to be involved in this disease. And I do not have much of an idea, because it does not look like, or at least I was unable to find, an actual plan as far as what USDA is going to do with this disease. So I can tell you a few basics of that, but I'm not going to be able to give you any particulars, because I could not find any particulars today. But I'm going to start with just some basics on the disease itself, and please, Dr. Tomky, jump in at any point as I'm talking about this.
I can start right now talking about closing the door when the horse is out already.
That was kind of my first thought on Friday. Well, actually, I got that news Saturday night. I know. I was like, really? Okay, so is this for that 1-year anniversary or what?
1/3 of the pigs in the United States have already been exposed. Now we worry about it?
Welcome to work with the government.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, this would have made a whole lot, what Secretary Vilsack announced on Friday would have made a whole lot more sense, say, 10 months earlier. Now it really is kind of shutting the barn door after the horse is out, but nevertheless, it is going to be interesting. But I'm going to start with some basic information about the disease, and then tell you what the state vet has been recommending as far as exhibitions, and then I'll give you as much as I know as far as what Vilsack told us, or not us, but the press on Friday. So, porcine epidemic diarrhea virus, commonly known as PEDv, hit. Well, we found it in May of last year, but in retrospective studies, they went back and looked at diarrhea samples from weeks prior to that, and they really think that it first hit the United States in about mid-April of last year. And it hit big, because it hit basically 6 different premises in 4 different states, and those premises were owned by 4 different companies. So it was kind of, wow. I mean, nobody ever expected that to happen to the pig industry. And we're talking the big commercial guys is where it started. And as far as regulatory veterinary medicine goes, we always figured the poultry industry, the pig industry, those guys have the biosecurity. They're the ones that we kind of worried about the least. The cattle industry scares the heck out of us as far as disease spread. But we always thought, okay, poultry industry, pig industry, they've got it going on. And it's just gone like wildfire through the pig industry. So that's got us all looking at our face in the hole and saying it's not big enough. So, anyway, so it hit last May. Basically what it does is it causes diarrhea. In the older pigs, it causes diarrhea, it causes vomiting, they go off feed. Most of them are going to get over it and get back on feed. It could cause some long-term problems in their GI tract, their small intestines, so that they may never gain as well as they should have, given their genetics, in those older pigs. The big problem with it is that it's just flat out killing the babies. So if your sows get it, their litter, that litter that they have right after they've gotten this disease, they're all going to die. I mean, it's basically killing 90 to 100% of the piglets in the sows. If it gets, once it gets into the farrowing barn, and those sows that are ready to farrow, is killing 90 to 100% of the piglets, and basically the other 10%, if you have 10% live, aren't worth anything anyway, because it's killed their small intestines to the point where they're really not going to be able to gain. They just cannot function very well. So therefore, that's the scary part of this, is that it's killing so many of the piglets, and it's going like wildfire through these farrowing barns. So once you have it in one room of a farrowing barn, it's going to be in the whole entire farm, basically. And it goes through within about a week, even, you know, just in multiple rooms. So at that point, the big commercial guys they're doing feedback as a vaccination program. So, you know, they're feeding basically the intestinal tracts of the dead baby pigs back to the sows to try to get some immunity in those sows. And it's working to some extent, but they're having farms re-break, and they're having farms be chronic, where they're not coming up to, you know, they're never coming back up to where they were prior to this disease as far as the number of piglets per litter that they're weaning. There are a few farms that have been able, it seems like, to clean it out pretty well and are back to almost what they were prior to this disease hitting them, as far as the number of piglets they're able to wean. So as far as, and I don't really know very much at all as far as how it's affecting the small producers. And part of Vilsec's thing from Friday is that finally we've decided it would be kind of nice if we knew a little bit more about what's going on in the world. Because right now, regulatory vets like myself are basically going off of what we call anecdotal information. So basically stories. We don't have a lot of solid evidence because this disease was not reportable, and so nobody was required to tell us what was going on. So I can tell you the little bit I know, which is pretty much what I've just told you. Dr. Tomky can probably fill in a few more details. And part of Secretary Vilsec's statement was that he wants that we should have more information, and that's what they're looking for. As far as treatments, it's a virus, so therefore you're really not going to treat the virus itself. You're doing what we call symptomatic treatment. So obviously you want to have good fluids to the pigs so that they don't dehydrate, and that's what's killing the babies, is they're dehydrating too fast. You just can't get enough fluids into them to compensate for the amount of diarrhea that's going through them. And then you have to bring them slowly back up to full feed after it's gone through the older pigs. Prevention, we're really hitting biosecurity really hard, and that's where making the show a terminal show comes in. Because the biosecurity part of this, basically you don't want it on your farm. You want to keep it off your farm, you know, and so cleaning and disinfecting all of the stuff that's coming onto the farm, and it's taking quite a bit to kill this virus. It does not take very many of these viral particles to cause infection, and they're more stable than what we first hoped that they would be in the environment. So you've got to get all of the organic material off of, say, your equipment, and the pig trucks are the ones that are implicated in a lot of the spread. And you guys know as well as I do how hard it is to get pig manure off of things. It's rather sticky and it's rather greasy and it doesn't come off very well. And if there's any left, the disinfectants can't work their way through the manure. So if there's any manure left on the equipment, the virus can still live in that manure. And even if you spray it with disinfectant, that disinfectant is not going to get into that piece of manure, and it's not going to kill the virus. And so then the next pig coming onto that truck, you know, of course, is going to stick its nose on that, eat it, and then it's going to be infected. It's going to start making a lot of virus and infect everybody else that it's around. So if you take that scenario and move that into a fair situation, you know, if you have one pig that's carrying the virus, and you might not even know it, because in those fair-aged pigs, they're really not going to show that many symptoms. They can get some diarrhea, they can get some vomiting, and they can go off feed. But they can still be shedding that virus after they've gotten better. And if it was a pretty mild disease through that one, you know, you might take it to the fair not even thinking that it could be infected with something bad. You might think it just had a little heat stress or something like that, caused a little bit of diarrhea. So you get one pig at the fair, and you all know that, you know, moving that pig up to the wash rack, taking it into the show ring to practice, going into for showmanship, going in for the market show. There's a lot of exposure chances there for all the other pigs at the fair. if you take one of those pigs back home, then you're going to expose all your pigs back home. And you yourself can expose all your pigs back home too. So that, I mean, so just making the show terminal is not going to protect your pigs back home. It's going to help though. But you yourself have to be very conscious of your own boots, your own jeans, your own equipment that you took to the fair, making sure that's all really, really clean and disinfected before it ever sees your other pigs back home. I can tell you that that we don't have any kind of a good vaccine yet. That feedback program can really only be done in a situation. We call those autogenous vaccines. Basically, they're vaccines made for a specific farm for a specific reason. A veterinarian can then spread that autogenous vaccine around a little bit to the surrounding farms, for instance. Or maybe to somebody, you know, this guy's cousin that just bought pigs from this guy. Okay, then that veterinarian could say, well, okay, then I can move this autogenous vaccine over here, so those dead piglets over here. But we can't spread it much beyond that. We as veterinarians, it's not allowed legally because those autogenous vaccines aren't licensed for general use. We don't have any vaccines that are licensed for general use. We don't have any vaccines on the horizon that even look good to be licensed for general use. We have some hope that someday we'll have a vaccine that we can use, but I can tell you right now I would say it's at least, and this is probably extremely optimistic, at least 6 months before we'd have a vaccine that would even get a provisional license for general use that you can, you know, that you can buy through your veterinarian and give to your pigs. So relying on the immunity, we can't give you that yet because we don't have that kind of a vaccine. This disease started in Europe in like the late 1960s. It moved into Asia, and it's been killing piglets in China for quite some time. None of them have much of anything as far as vaccine. It hasn't been nearly as bad as in Europe as it became in China. Our version, the strain that we're dealing with right now, came from China. We don't know why. We don't know how. We have some suspicions, but we haven't been able to prove anything. And USDA and the Food and Drug Administration both worked on that way back last May. I was a little bit of part of that work, but we were never able to prove anything as far as how this virus got in here. But I can tell you right now, China doesn't have much of anything as far as vaccine. Europe doesn't have much of anything as far as vaccine. So we're kind of on our own in trying to develop something. And right now we don't have anything. Yeah, that 6 months is probably really optimistic for one that's even just a provisional license, and I don't know if it would even be that good. One of the challenges with this virus is that it's all in the intestines. So giving them a shot, sub-Q or even IM, doesn't get you very good immunity into the GI tract. The feedback program, where you're actually feeding them the virus, that gets you a lot better immunity in the GI tract, but it's not very realistic as far as trying to, you know, spread it around that way. It works within a company, but it doesn't work outside that company, and even within the companies, it doesn't seem to be working all the time. Anything you'd like to add, Dr. Tomky?
Well, you know what Dr. Lomkin's explaining about the feedback deal is they're intentionally spreading the virus around once it hits. Even though it spreads quite well on its own, we don't want any holes in it. We want everybody to be exposed so that they become immune. And once a sow has good immunity, she will pass that immunity to the piglets in her colostrum. And that's when pigs start to live, is once we have colostral immunity. But PED the clinical signs are identical to TGE. Both are caused by coronavirus. So when it first came into the United States, we said, oh, this is just like TGE, we'll treat it like TGE. But the immunity we get from PED is not as good as TGE. When we do this with TGE, the immunity is nearly absolute. They don't get it again, and once the sows become immune, the piglets live, and everything's great. And with this disease, it starts to look like that, and then if we bring in a little more virus, it just kind of blows up again. It doesn't blow up like the first time, but it blows up again, which doesn't happen with TGE. So it's really a bugger that way. It just doesn't go away as easily as we hope.
Anybody have any questions about the disease itself?
Are there several strains of the PEDv virus, or is it one virus that we're seeing?
There's basically one virus. There have been a few little reports here and there. Dealing with the academics, the guys that are studying this, is really rather interesting. They are really excited because it's a brand new virus and they're having all kinds of fun. So every once in a while we get a little side report of, oh my God, we've got a new strain. So far, none of those have really turned out exactly. There is another coronavirus that's not PEDv and it's not TGE and it's, I can't even remember what the heck we're calling it.
Delta Corona.
Thank you, Delta coronavirus. And it's not as severe as PED, but it's not PED either. So it's you know, we basically now have the 3 in the coronavirus family. But as far as PEDv, it's pretty much all the same. And it's pretty much all from that same, we think, introduction from China. Like I say, there's especially one piece of academic study that looked like we actually had a second introduction from a different part of China, but I haven't seen any confirmation on that. So I'm going with the one strain, and that was kind of a strange deal.
Yeah, there's some minor genetic differences, and they're able to type that down and kind of fingerprint it and say, well, this one's going around in this area and that one's around that. But they're so similar that it'd really be hard to say that it's different.
Yeah.
How long does it last without a host?
In the environment, that's one of those questions that we thought we had the answer to, and we've decided maybe we don't exactly. In the environment, it can easily live 7 days until you get really dried out, and really dry, and or hot. So temperature, we're hoping that it settles down as summer comes. But you have to basically get it to at least 140 to know that you've killed it, and you have to hold it at 140 long enough to get that temperature all the way through everything. So what they're doing for the pig trailers is they're cleaning them, they're disinfecting them, and then they're baking them at 140, and that's getting them basically sterilized so that they're not going to spread it. But basically in the slurries, like they found it for like up to 21 days. In cold, wet manure, it's like 28 days. And just, like on surfaces though, if they dry out, then you're only looking at 24, 48, 72 hours, depending on how long it took to dry that surface out. So the good news is in Colorado, it's a semi-arid environment, things are going to dry out more quickly. You can, if you could get like a panel and clean it off pretty darn well, like a hog panel, and then just take it outside and lean it against the barn and let it sit in the sun and dry out for a day or two, you're probably good, as long as you got all the organic matter off of it. But if you live in Michigan, it's going to be a lot harder because it's a lot more humid environment. It's just not going to dry out as fast.
Most of us aren't farrowing though. I mean, they're 4-H pigs, and it's a seasonal deal. That's a lot of what I'm saying.
Right, and so the question now comes with the whole recommendation for terminal shows. And the state veterinarian made that recommendation based on the fact that, yes, probably what? I've heard various from 70 to 90% of the kids showing pigs don't have breeding hogs at home. Does that sound about right for Sedgwick County?
I'd say a little higher.
At least 95. So, yeah, are we punishing 95% for the other 5%? Prior to Friday, I would have said maybe a little bit. The concern though is, okay, so you've got, say, 4 pigs at home. And, 2 of those pigs you're planning on feeding out and eating yourselves or selling to grandpa or whatever, and the other 2 are show pigs. So your show pigs get it, they bring it home to those 2 pigs are still there. and somebody, you know, your next door neighbor has a couple pigs. So this, the concern of the state vet's office is that we don't want to very quickly, more quickly than might otherwise happen, spread it throughout the countryside by, you know, by neighbors and everything like that. So the fair pigs all get together, they all spread it around at the fair, then they all scatter back home, and then conceivably spread it to their neighbors. Again, this is semi-arid environment, so that shouldn't happen as much as it would in Iowa, but it certainly could happen. So that's one of the concerns, you know, plus those 5% that have sows at home. Now, on top of that, Friday was kind of a game changer when Secretary Vilsack, and truly this shocked me. I had no idea this was coming, guys. Truly, I mean, I didn't actually see it on Friday. I saw it Saturday night. I just kind of sat there and stared at my computer and thought, huh. So what Secretary Vilsack has said is that this is now a reportable disease, and any herd that has this disease, any premises that has this disease, is going to have to report it and going to have to get on a herd plan and a control plan. And we want to know where these pigs have moved and how they've moved and all kinds of interesting stuff. And I have no idea how we're going to do this.
They're going to base it off pseudorabies and brucellosis, like they did with those?
Maybe.
20 years ago, and now no longer is in effect.
Well, although I don't have a pseudorabies or swine brucellosis in commercial swine anymore.
Yeah.
So it worked.
It worked, yes.
It did. And yes, I would think maybe we could do that. We could look at those programs that we've used before. The challenge is that seem to be a warmer, fuzzier agency than we were when those programs were first put into place, and so I'm not sure if anyone actually at the Washington D.C. level is going to put that strong of regulations into place at this point. So therefore, I'm not sure how this is going to work. I can tell you that most of the programs we've put in place since about 2005 have been rather interesting as far as the way they are designed. And what Secretary Vilsack said in his statement makes it look like, yes, we're going to go back to that pseudorabies type, cattle brucellosis type of a program. But again, I haven't seen a program like that come out of USDA for several years. So that's why I was frantically looking for more information this afternoon, so that I would have a better answer for you guys, because I just don't know. What he said was pretty strong, really. If we're really gonna want, I mean, disease reporting is one thing. Doing something with that information is a whole other thing. So knowing that your farm has PEDv, which we don't know right now. I mean, we know we get positives almost every week out of Colorado. We have no idea where those positives are coming from. I know one farm that is infected, but that's because I was involved with that way back in May, trying to figure out how it even got into the United States. That's the only farm that I officially know about in Colorado, and yet we know there's probably a few more that are truly infected, but we're not getting that information. This will require us to actually get that information. What he said is that we're also going to then make those farms go on these herd plans. Don't know what a herd plan is going to look like. And that they're going to have not movement controls, but that we're going to track the movement. Not sure how that's going to work. And that we're going to track the movement of the equipment. I'm assuming that's referring to the trucks transporting the pigs, but it might be even referring to the feed trucks. And and the other equipment that moves on and off of these farms. And again, I don't know how we're going to do that either.
And my other question to that would be: are they considering is a 4-H kid that has 2 pigs at home, is that considered a farm?
In my mind, it would be. I don't know what Secretary Vilsack's idea would be. I mean, it's still 2 pigs and it's still on a farm.
Yep.
How long can they shed? Do we know this?
I'm going to refer that one. How long can they shed?
We don't know how long, it's probably several months.
So we're gonna have pigs showing up to start with PED.
This year it's likely to happen because.
I know, I mean, I know pigs that are coming from positive farms.
People selling show pigs are, last year I didn't hear of any reports of show pigs having it. This year, heard a lot of reports.
Well, I've been advised to get it. I've been advised to go to shows to get it. To bring it home, to get it through them now and you know, move forward.
And yeah, and I've been hearing that plan out there, and you know, I can't argue too hard against it. Especially before Friday, I couldn't argue too hard against it, because if you lose this litter, that's one thing, but if you lose the litter come December, January, which is the litter that's going to be supplying the show pigs for next year, then that's a whole different ballgame. So I can see the logic in trying to get it now versus waiting and risking getting it then.
Well,
However, the problem with that is that we're not seeing the good immunity that we've seen with TGE, and so there's no guarantee that your spring litter would be, you know, that you'd even get enough pigs to be able to make it worth feeding the sows for that time period.
well, and I'll just kind of step in here and interject. From a show pig producer's perspective, and I know where he has heard this from, the reason they are pushing, or us as show pig producers, and I don't completely agree with this either, because of the fact that there's no scientific proof out there that there is a true immunity to it. So why infect yourself if you're not guaranteed an immunity on top of that? My farm is PED negative, and we have stayed that way. And come the time that it has surrounded me, then you have to make the decision of, okay, do I do it? I don't have enough scientific proof that there's immunity, so I don't really want to personally mess with it if I don't have to. But from a show pig perspective, for everybody else, for everybody in the room that does not have sows at home that has a worry about killing litters or whatever that may be, from a show pig's perspective, from a breeder selling pigs to kids that get jackpotted and then shown at county fair and state fair and wherever, when those pigs break with PED, they get extremely dehydrated. And that is one of the main things, diarrhea, vomiting, all those things. Those things take a show pig that you have spent time and money into basically making them pretty, for simple fact, and you drain it all out of them. If you have a dehydrated hog, I can guarantee you are not going to go to the top of your class. So that is the mindset behind show pig producers telling their customers, go out there and break with the virus during the summer when you're jackpotting. You can take those hogs home, they stay in your barn for a couple of weeks, and then you come back, and if there is an immunity, you go to county fair and the guy pen next to you has PED, and your pig gets it, your pig, they may break again, but it's not going to be as severe as the first time they broke, so you're not going to see the dehydration, and you're going to be able to keep those hogs bloomed and show it. That's the mindset behind that. For those of you that don't have sows at home, that, you know, the show pig breeders aren't telling you that because they want you to infect your sows. They're telling you that because they want your show pigs to look the best they can at their endpoint.
And there still are going to be quite a few jackpots. You know, and the county fairs, again, on this terminal recommendation, and I will tell you that I pushed the state vet to give me something, because my extension agents were coming to me saying, what should we do? And I wanted the state vet to at least make a recommendation, so that we had, you know, we had something solid that we could say, this is the state's vet's recommendation and this is why. To make these county fairs terminal, I mean, yes, there are a lot of pigs that go to jackpots, but there are a lot of pigs that just show up at the county fair too. And if we make the county fairs terminal, then hopefully the state fair pigs that are back home will be okay for the state fair, because we also don't want a bunch of diarrheic pigs wandering around state fair. I'm one of the vets that has to work the state fair, and I can tell you I hate DQing animals, but I hate even more having nasty looking stuff for the general public. You know, the Sedgwick County Fair is not pulling that much general public that's not agricultural related. But Pueblo, certainly does. And so part of this is hoping to keep it from breaking at state fair, not guaranteed that we won't, but you know, hopefully we'll have a good plan for that too. And you know, if your county fair, most county fairs are close enough to state fair that if your county fair pigs are the same as your state fair pigs, and they break with it from the county fair, like you said, they're not going to look very good for the state fair. They're going to lose a lot of condition, and they're going to shrink pretty bad. So that's the other part of this, is that even if you wouldn't make this terminal show, there's no guarantee that if you're planning on using some of your county fair pigs to go to state fair, that they're gonna be able to do that. Yes, sir.
Who's gonna follow the resale truck if it's a terminal show to make sure they get their head chopped off and they don't go somewhere else?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that anybody's thought about that yet. That would be Fair Board. I mean,
What's the state vet's definition of terminal?
the state vet's definition of terminal is that they're not going to go to any more shows. So if they want to, if you want to take them to a single place and feed them for another couple of weeks, which I know a lot of people like to do when they, the people that floor the fair sale, thank you. A lot of them are taking them someplace and feeding them for a few weeks before they take them to slaughter. That's fine. That's not that big a deal, because that's more of a feedlot type situation, and those guys are going to know that they're running a risk of bringing that into their area. I think that most of those guys, I hope anyway, are going to have specific areas where they're going to keep those pigs before they send
Put
them.
it in a breeder.
So you're
knowing
talking the
that-
resale buyers could take them to something else and feed them up and then take them.
That's going to be one of those challenges, and you guys have brought up something that I haven't even thought about yet, so I'm kind of talking on my feet here, which is going to be interesting. I think that's going to be up to, I don't think the state vet wants to get that deeply involved. I haven't talked to them about it because, again, you guys are bringing up a question that I don't even know if they've thought about yet in the state vet's office, which is a very good question, by the way. But I think in the end, there's not enough of me and my counterparts to really enforce these animals going direct, going to feed maybe for a little bit and then to slaughter. I think that's going to be up to the fair boards to say, this is a terminal show.
I think the
They're not
terminal
going back home.
use is wrong, if that's the case. It's not terminal. Terminal it's over, in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
every pig that steps foot on that place.
Right.
It's going.
It's
Which,
dies.
and I will, and this isn't towards the state vets, but I will also say that Colorado State Fair, National Western Stock Show are also considered terminal shows, and they are. National Western Stock Show, you come out of the show ring, you drive into a truck, and that is the end. However, down the road between that fairgrounds and that slaughter plant, there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts in there, and there's a lot of people that are involved in that process. That now you've made your show terminal, but there's a crooked truck driver somewhere that pulled over on the side of the road and dumped a couple gilts off for a guy. Your fair is no longer terminal.
Well, and we're not sealing the trucks, and that's our answer to making sure that the animals get to slaughter intact as we seal the trucks. And no, we're not sealing the trucks coming out of stock show or state fair, although you're right, they are going direct to slaughter from those two shows. And I don't know, maybe the state vet's office has thought about this and I just don't know what their thinking is. That is one of the problems with my working for USDA instead of the state vet's office. But I don't know. I don't know if the person that floors your sale will just take all of them, except for the ones that, that whoever buys, the individuals that buy at the sale would then send to Ovid or wherever. I don't know. That's a very interesting question. I don't know. I'm not going to obviously come up with an answer for you tonight. I can talk to the state vet's office and see what they're thinking on that. I can tell you, there's not enough of me to seal all the trucks in all the fairs in my section, let alone in the state of Colorado. So I don't think that's going to be the answer. But I don't know what the answer is exactly.
The other side of that is 99% of these kids are just, we're not in feral. You get a guy like Scott who does it, who's way more knowledgeable than me. You know, if he buys a gilt and wants to take it back home and breed it,
Well, it's kinda like you just said.
he knows.
If the guy who's gonna buy him off the buyback truck and go home and feed him, you just said he knows enough to know
Right.
to contain. So do the 5 breeders that I know of in this area. There's 5 of them. And if they wanna take a gilt home, they know the risk.
Right.
It's
Even
way
coming to
more
the
than I
fair
know the risk.
is a risk.
And so why not
Yes.
just put your
Even just
fair book-
walking into the fair without a pig is a
Exactly.
risk,
Or a
yeah.
vehicle of someone that was at the fair.
Well, coming to this meeting was a risk. You know, that's, I
Yeah.
mean, that's my thing. I've watched fellow show pig producers in the Midwest that went to the extreme of they didn't let themselves, their family, or their herdsmen go to a local convenience store, gas station, you know, McDonald's, those kind of things. They took it to that extreme, and 2 weeks later he broke with PED.
And you've got 50 hog producers in there. We have 5.
Exactly.
Let me interrupt here. I've been wanting to say something. Dr. Lomkin can't say this because the USDA's got their head in the sand. Sorry. Sorry.
I'm glad you said that though.
PED came from China and feed. I know that like I'm standing here. And this winter it spread like wildfire. And this guy that didn't do anything for 2 weeks, he got it in his feed. Once we got it in the United States, it took a little while, but every slaughter plant in the United States has received a PED pig by now. And they sell plasma for pig feed. And it survives the drying process into plasma, and we've spread it in the feed like wildfire this winter. The industry's figured that out. We're starting to take care of that, and the spread is really slowing down. So a few months ago, it looked like it was inevitable. It's not inevitable anymore. If we use our heads, we might be able to keep it out. And we've been spreading the feed like wildfire. And the USDA said, you can't spread it in the feed, can't spread it in the feed. Canada got the feed. Well, it took a while to figure it out. It took a long time to figure it out. Because they take that same feed after 2 or 3 weeks, and the virus died, and they said, fed it to some clean pigs, and it didn't happen. Well, it ain't the feed, it ain't the feed. Because the virus does die. It dies slow, but it does die. It's in the feed. What we've been doing. The guy that stayed home, didn't do anything for 2 weeks, how'd he get it? He just went to the feed store and bought it. I'll be darned, it just came right in. It got right in through Fort Knox.
So that just kind of shows that really making these little county fairs like this terminal, is that really gonna slow it down? Is our 60 head hog show really gonna make an effect on our area? Slowing it down, because all the people that produce pigs around here or go anywhere, they come to the fair. They're gonna come to the fair and they're gonna take it home on.
Okay, remember, this is Colorado, not Iowa, so therefore we've got that semi-arid thing going for us. I think that the biggest risk for us is the pig-to-pig contact and a lot of manure. That's gonna stay wet and it's not, gonna completely dry out. So yes, I still think that a terminal show will help. I'm not gonna say it's not gonna prevent it from spreading, but I'm hoping that it will decrease the amount of spread in the country so that we can still keep some people that don't have it. I'm very glad that Dr. Tomky stood up and said that, because he's right, I can't. I have been told specifically not even to say the word feed when talking about PEDv. But if we can get it under control by no longer doing the feed thing, and we can get it under control by trying to do the biosecurity as best we can for a year or two. I'm not saying make this terminal show for the next 20 years. I'm saying let's make it terminal this year, hopefully not even next year. Hopefully we can get a vaccine that'll work. Hopefully we can, but give us enough time that we can hopefully get a handle on this and get it slowed down. I'm not sure that what Secretary Vilsack has done is really gonna do that much as far as slowing it or stopping it. What it will do is let us at least know who's got it. But if everybody in the country starts really looking at this and saying, you know what, this year we're going to bite the bullet, we're going to try to do our best as far as getting this stopped. Hopefully we can actually get it slowed down to the point where we can get some control, and then we won't have to worry about it quite so much. And you're right. I mean, people coming in, walking through, they're at big risk because they're going to get the pig shit on their shoes, and you know, if they're not paying attention, they're going to go back home and spread it. But hopefully we can also put up some signs that say, you know what, not guaranteed not to have PEDv here. Make sure that you completely clean and disinfect your footwear before you go around any other pigs. Will that get everybody? No. But if we can even keep half of the 4-H pigs that might have gone home and spread it among their little group and their neighbors' little groups, and if we can keep even half of the people that show up at the fair and want to go look at the pigs, because you know they have pigs at home and they want to see how their pigs compare. If we can get half of them to wash their shoes before they go out to look at their pigs, we've done a lot. So, you know, I'm not telling you absolutely it has to be terminal. I'm telling you I'd like to see it stay terminal because I think that that will help. And I think that the angst, the just grumbling, will also help people keep it in mind. So, you know, while you're all stomping around the fairgrounds mad because it's a terminal show, you'll remember that the reason it's a terminal show is because of the porcine epidemic diarrhea virus, and hopefully that will remind you to clean your shoes before you go out and work with your other pigs. I mean, I would go so far, if I had pigs at the fair and I had pigs at home, basically I would dedicate a pair of rubber boots to the fair. And I would, you know, those boots would stay at the fair. I would wear those when I was working in the pig barn. And then at the end of the show, those boots would go in the trash, and that would be that. I know, I think it was Elbert County said that even last year, they had a hot seat set up, you know, as people were leaving that day. You know, everybody was going home, and they had a hot seat so that people could spray off their panels and their buckets and their feed pans and their shovels and all that kind of stuff. Get them sprayed up and cleaned really well before you ever put them back in your truck. You know, then when you get home, pull out the rubber mats out of your truck and spray them up good too. So there's certainly things to do to help make sure that you're not taking it home. I can't guarantee that you won't take it home. I mean, my biggest deal is, okay, so you're worried about the boots, but you forget about that nice smear of pig shit on your jeans from when you rubbed up against the fence or when that pig walked past, you know, while you were...
Particle in your hair or...
Particle in your hair is probably not going to be big enough to spread it. And that's the thing. I mean, we're not like hair nets and masks and all that. Humans are not going to be aren't going to be harboring the virus and then able to shed it. Foot and mouth disease, yeah, actually, we can harbor it in our nasal passages and spread it for up to 72 hours. But this virus, no. So a particle in your hair, no. It's going to take, you know, probably a visible chunk of manure in our environment that's not going to dry out and kill that virus before you get back to your other pigs. So if you can get all the visible stuff off and disinfected, then you're going to be doing pretty well, probably.
97 to 99% of the farms in this county are pig-free from September to April. It's the breeders, guys, that got the problem. Most of us, if it lasts 72 hours, let's say it lasts 3 months, it's gonna pass. You follow what I'm saying? When my farm does not have pigs, if I bring it home to my farm,
as long as you clean all that manure out of there before you bring pigs back in.
In the dirt, I wouldn't guarantee it won't last a year.
Really?
I wouldn't trust it. This virus is really hardy in the environment. Really, really hardy. And I didn't want to interrupt Richanne, and maybe that's official, but her estimates how long it lives are much shorter than what I've been hearing.
And
It lives much longer. Dry on the table, probably a week.
Okay, and my estimates are coming from.
On that clean table, if you put some there, the table looked clean, and you let it dry at 70 degrees, probably a week.
And we had a, in our vet lab or whatever, we had a vet tech leave it for, I believe, or she had a cart where they had inoculated pigs with it, and she triple washed it, triple disinfected. It was positive still after 17 days.
Thank you.
It was pretty crazy how they've
Now-
done some different stuff in our own lab and it lives.
Now with PED, and I want the vets to correct me if I'm wrong, positive does not necessarily mean infected, correct? Because that was one of the main issues with feed, and I know this, and you don't have to say anything because I'm touching on the feed subject, but I deal with a show feed company very closely that was one of the main ones that was accused of spreading. And this show feed company is also a very, very large commercial hog feed company, and so they don't just have show pigs to worry about. If they did, they probably wouldn't matter. But is that true that is positive and negative on just a PCR does not necessarily mean it's infected? You have to do a bioassay to determine whether it's positive or whether it's infected or not.
Really good question. And maybe a little bit difficult to answer. I'm gonna stand up. That's a really good, he's talking about PCR positive. PCR tests for genetic material. And we can find genetic material for many species of virus long after the virus says, I'll use the word died, it's inactivated and can't spread it again. And what he was saying, like a bioassay, and we've done bioassays in pigs that have failed and failed and failed, and then on the 10th try it worked. So one bioassay doesn't mean it's safe. That's the reason the USDA, I'm sorry Richanne, that's the reason the USDA is saying it's not in the feed, it didn't come from China in the feed. It has undoubtedly been proven to be in the feed in recent months. That is a fact. Now we have not proven that it came from China in the feed. The Chinese feed was PCR positive. And months later when we didn't know the name PED for quite some time, like a month. We didn't know what it was. What is this? It's something new. Well, by the time we fed that feed back, what we call a bioassay, yeah, it didn't do it. Okay, it wasn't the feed. That's the official USD response, it wasn't the feed. How did it get in 8 states in 1 week?
Ask pig.
That was a really fast pig running around. Yes, no, it was in the food.
And while you're standing up, I'll ask you this question too. I don't hear this
Okay.
question. As a producer, I understand the economic reasoning for possibly making the county fair terminal or shutting down jackpot circuits or whatever states may choose to do. From an economic standpoint, I have 60 show pigs out of the home. Yeah, if I got PED during one of my farrowing seasons, it would be huge. It would probably wipe me off the map. But at the same time, outside of the show pig people I sell to, nobody would really notice that. So on a bigger spectrum of the hog world, the Seaboards, the Murphy Browns, all those guys are way more important from an economic standpoint. So economically, if we shut down a county fair or made it terminal from that aspect, which personally I think if you're going to do anything to stop PED, I think you just need to cancel a hog show completely. That's my personal opinion. But from an economic standpoint, if all the units around you from a commercial aspect are negative, and they are trying very hard to be negative, because commercial units have great biosecurity, I shouldn't say great because clearly it's not good enough, but decent biosecurity. So in terms of Sedgwick County, Phillips County, Yuma County, the counties that have Seaboard, Murphy Browns, whatever they may be, are there any of those units that have broke with PED within a 60 or 100 mile radius of us?
Oh, yeah.
So they're all positive up here. In Phillips and Sedgwick County.
Okay.
I work for Murphy Brown in Yuma County. Murphy Brown is negative.
Yeah, they're negative.
And they are selfishly hoping that pig shows become terminal.
Has it been proven that it can be airborne, and how far?
It has been proven to go airborne 7 miles.
You found 10 miles top.
10 miles.
10 miles. The virus is out of 10 miles, but we don't know how to infect the pig.
Oh, yeah, right. We found the virus that far. We have had farms break 7 miles away. The airborne deal, a little bit back to what Richanne says. When we've got big finishers like you guys are familiar with what Seaboard has, and there's 16,000 head of pigs in a small area that all kind of get it at once. There's a cloud of virus, we can't see it or anything, but there's a cloud of virus around there that just, and it goes. And a steady, gentle breeze will take it quite a ways, especially if we've got humidity, foggy. Blizzards are notorious for moving viruses. PERS has moved 7 miles in a blizzard. Anyway, the 4-H guy's got 2 pigs. There isn't going to be that big old cloud like 16,000. It's probably not going to go airborne very far.
But they also have shown that it can be moved by birds as well.
Yep.
So.
Well, that was my biggest question, and I had heard, I guess you could call them quote unquote rumors because they had not come from the horse's mouth in terms of Seaboard or Murphy Brown or anybody like that. But I had heard that they were positive, and I know those guys have biosecurity protocols, and so that didn't really surprise me by any means. But I just kind of want to know from an economic standpoint of saying, well, we're going to make our county for a terminal because we want to keep the economic well-being of our county intact. Well, if Seaboard and the immunity thing comes into play there again, but if Seaboard's already broken or Murphy Brown is still negative, but throughout the summer may possibly break, then what is the economic value, I guess, of it?
Now, I might, we're talking a lot about terminal and so forth. You guys, a lot of you probably show horses and cattle and sheep and goats and all that kind of stuff too. I was pushing for terminal shows before I ever heard of PED because of what I've seen spread. PERS, TG, rhinitis, I've seen all that stuff spread from shows. And we don't, on occasion I see a heifer come home from a show or a sale sick, but that's kind of rare. And I see a horse come home with flu once in a while, and he coughs for a couple weeks and gets over it. But you bring something home to your herd, and you might live with it forever. Some of those things you don't get rid of. And I've been pushing for terminal shows since I graduated from vet school 32 years ago. So this doesn't change. This brings it to light out in the open. This is the new hot topic and everything. But I've been pushing for terminal shows forever because I used to show pigs. I caught rhinitis showing pigs 45 years ago. And I wished I never took my pig to a show because I had rhinitis till I depopulated. Just something to think about. Pigs share diseases different than other things. And another thing that's kind of been coming on, I mean, the surest way to catch any pig disease is from another pig. On our boots, yeah, we can do it, but that isn't near as sure. I mean, if you bring in a sick pig, you're going to get it. You stomp through something with your boots and then you go home, and you might do it, you might not. But you bring home a sick pig, guaranteed, it will work. It will work then.
So like in our certain instance in our county, obviously it's been here, like you said, for a year. Why wasn't anything done to inform these fair boards earlier so then they weren't going to make these decisions so late after all these kids have purchased their hogs and have their plans for them?
That's a very good question.
So now we're just kind of punishing the kids essentially and wanting these kids to fix this problem, and it shouldn't be their deal.
This is one of those situations where a lot of us were kind of sitting back and hoping. There was a lot of hope involved here. We were hoping that this wasn't going to go as fast as it did. We were hoping that it was, we could get it controlled. Seaboard, I mean, I was pretty darn proud of Seaboard because half of Seaboard got it, the other half did not until I heard just recently. And the fact that, that first half of Seaboard was one of the first ones that broke, and that was the one I was involved with. back a year ago. And the fact that they were able to keep it from basically crossing the highway and getting the other half of their farms is amazing. And I mean, I was really proud of them for managing to keep it that long, but they did just break. So I was kind of looking at that as a success story, and I think that a lot of people in Colorado were kind of saying, well, and the other problem is, again, we in regulatory medicine, which are the ones that started talking to the Fair Board not too long ago, we don't know, because it was not reportable. We knew Seaboard had broken. That was the only one for sure that we knew of
Which is 30 miles.
in Colorado.
No, there's only 112 miles.
Well, the one that broke first a year ago or wherever it was.
60 miles from here, but
Yeah, there are ways, but so we all we saw were test results. Yes, positives, negatives. Every week we had positives and negatives. We didn't know if those samples were being sent in from Seaboard or whether they were being sent in from somebody else. If it was all Seaboard, well then we had a little problem in one little area, and they were doing a pretty darn good job of keeping it right there. In which case, maybe we didn't need to worry about it so much. But it didn't really start exploding until really November. And then December, it got even worse. And, you know, it takes us a while to move, obviously, since it took us an entire year to finally decide that it was reportable. But even in the state vet's office, it takes a while to decide, because we knew this was going to be a very unpopular thing. It takes us a while to decide, okay, let's just bite the bullet and do this. There were some states that did this a lot sooner than we did. There are some states that made it law that all pig shows are terminal and canceled all the jackpots. The Colorado State Vet's Office did not want to go that far. We wanted to at least, you know, leave the jackpots up, and I don't necessarily quite agree with that, although I don't know how you'd enforce that besides making it a state law that no more jackpots for the foreseeable future. Because that's still a risk. That's the same exact risk as the county fair, really. But basically that's a risk that you take upon yourselves if you want to go to a jackpot that's still having a swine show. Some of the jackpots have canceled their swine shows, some of them have not. But the state vet's office didn't want to go to the point of saying absolutely all shows are going to be terminal, basically therefore killing off the jackpots. But they did want to make a strong enough recommendation so that the counties, individual counties, could make a decision. Park County, they're not going to have a terminal show. But Park County doesn't, I think, they maybe have one or two